Hey there, welcome back to Outbuilding. My name's Steve and I'm going to work today on some more little laser bits. I'm still waiting on my table saw to see if I can transfer that to a new owner and start working on this mobile bench with the table saw built in. But for now I'm using this and I'm going through and I'm cutting up these little panels and I'm building something to solve the next pain point that I'm finding in the garage as I move everything from the lower side to the upper side here. So follow me and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So in the last episode, I went ahead and I put together this router drawer and got the router bits organized. And now I'm going to work on one of the next pieces that I find I spend a lot of time on, and that is just all the little tiny hardware pieces. I've got all this hardware. I've got drawers full of stuff. I've got open pieces. Some of this stuff is organized somewhat by at least class of thing. Some of it not so much. I always have a hard time finding what I need. So I built this little box and I used the 1/4-inch MDF and the settings that I used for the routers and came up with a little box with a little handle on it that I can lift out. And since I've got standardized drawers, I'm gonna use the standardized sort of form factor and build a series of these little box modules that I can stick in there and organize my hardware in. And because they have a little top handle on them, I can put a label on them. So I'll show you in this episode how I came about the size that I worked out and how that'll be in multiples so that I can handle different size pieces of hardware, label them. Again, this is super inexpensive material. These cost just, it's pennies actually to build these little boxes. It does require a laser for the way I'm doing it and making these little finger joints. I had somebody give me some grief about that last time, and I understand that because a laser is not easy to come by. The one I have here, I've paid for several times over doing projects for other people and for a company that I used to own. So that one is certainly a benefit to have here. I'll show you how you can do this without a laser, and I'm going to go try to find somebody else's laser and try to use that as well. So anyway, that's what I'm working on this episode, and by the end I hope to have a good way to organize all my stuff into neat little tidy rows. All right, so I've got a drawer here. This is my standard drawer form factor. I wanted to figure out, the first box I made was just to kind of see that the boxes work, and these work really well. Pretty easy to put together because the keying from the finger joints makes it really easy to sort of align and get set up. And you saw I put together a bunch of these. All I do when I'm done is just pop the rubber bands off and sand them up a little bit, and they're good to go. So I started thinking through how I want to do this because these are little tiny bins for small parts, or just a few things. Some parts are longer, some are wider, and other things like that, mostly hardware. So I decided to go ahead and put a row of 6 across. I gave myself just a little bit of space between them. And then I'm gonna make modules, and then they're also, I think it's 6 deep. So I'll start, this is the sort of a 1-unit cube, and I'll do a 1x2, which is longer for things like longer bolts. And I'll get that set up and then I can stack these in and see how it's going, and I can do a 4x4. So the idea is that I can mix and match these things. The little handles I put on there so that they're easy to grab out if you've got them stacked, several deep and want to grab an interior one. I'm hoping that you can use that handle to pull it out and put it back, and then I can also label the top of that handle there. So the handle will stay the same width and then the boxes will just grow. So I'm gonna go to the computer and I'm gonna show you kind of how I lay this out, and it's gonna be different for everybody's computer. I'm using a software package called Vectorworks on a Mac, and I get that done and I create a PDF of that and I move it over to my machine to run the laser. So I'll walk you through kind of how I lay these out, and they go pretty quickly, and then I put them together in sort of a tile, and I found that if I put them, because of the symmetry involved, if I put 2 together on one panel, I can pretty much maximize the panel. So I'll show you that on the computer. To get started, I did an accurate measurement of the thickness of the MDF, which in my case is 0.240, so it's not exactly quarter, it's a little bit smaller. And then I transferred that to the computer. So I won't walk you through this entirely, but basically I took the 2x1 module that I'd already kind of built, and it's made of 5 pieces. There's the bottom, the front, the back, and then the 2 sides. And I switched, and I'm making a 2x2 here. So I just extended the bottom out by 2.5 inches, which is sort of my module increment. And then the sides aren't going to change, so I can just work with the left-hand side showing here. And when I'm done, I can just do a mirror image of that for the right-hand side. And so I rebuilt the bottom to have enough tabs, little finger joints to accommodate the wider thing. And then the front is a little bit shorter because of the little drawer handle. And so it sits there and has some tabs that correspond. And you can see I'm just laying these out so that they're kind of almost like folded paper. They're all kind of flat. And that lets me know everything's lined up. And then when I'm done with this, once I get the 5 main panels that make up the box plus the little handle piece all drawn and kind of laid flat, then I'm going to sort of rearrange them to make them fit in the most efficient way I can on a panel. And in this case, this one just fit a single box on a given panel size, and then I just cut my panels to that and feed them to the laser with a little bit of margin in them. Okay, with all 6 panels all set up, now I go ahead and I take them and rearrange them on the page so that they're lined up in a clean rectangle with as much overlap and shared edges as I can possibly get so that I have less cutting to do on the laser because it's just more efficient that way. So I got them blocked into a rectangle here, and that was pretty tight. It's about as good as you can get. And then I grouped that, and then I walk through and I redraw all the lines, sort of tracing on top of that, and the snapping makes that really quick. And I'm doing it in a pattern that I want the laser to run. Because the laser, in my case, follows whichever way I drew it, it's going to follow the same thing when it goes to cut it. So I'm kind of drawing it in a clean pattern, and now I'm walking around the perimeter to get first it was the interior lines, and now I'm walking around the perimeter to get the outer part done. And that's it for this. There's just one set of cuts and one pass. There's a couple little islands in there. You can see some little tabs. And when I'm done, I can, fix it up here. When I'm done, I can take that red part and pull it aside, and that's my cut pattern. So now with the laser file and the dimensions, I cut some panels that fit that blank. I then take one of those blanks and load it into the laser, and with the code set up that I just drew, I go ahead and close the laser lid and then run that pattern. And those patterns depends on the piece, but they take about between 2 and 3 minutes to run. And after that cut, I found that if I kind of wipe them off, it helps get rid of a little bit of the residue. The smoke creates kind of a gooey residue, but I wipe them off, let them dry, and then when I sand that, it tends to knock off any raised parts from that residue. Next up, I sand those both top and bottom. I've just got a little sanding block, and it gets rid of a little bit of that residue, helps kind of knock off the edges. And when I flip it over and get the backside, it helps, if there's any joints that didn't quite get cut all the way through, it seems to help kind of relieve them and cleans them up. Once they're all sanded, it's pretty easy. I just do a quick pass with the sandpaper. Then I can pull apart all the pieces. And it's a little bit like an old plastic model where you kind of push it out of the sprues, as they call them. But these aren't injection molded, but they pop out pretty easily, and they come out really clean. So then I take the parts and lay them all out back into that sort of paper pattern as it was on the computer. Glue all the tab faces that are going to mate with one another, and so I'm kind of catching the whole joint by getting each side of those tabs as they go up and down the finger joints. I don't glue in the handle yet. I just get all those glued, and then they go together really easily because those tabs act as sort of keying slots, and the kerf thickness of the laser cut makes for a really good kind of clearance joint to have everything go together but still register really well. So I flip that together, build it up, and then lastly I glue in the little handle before I take some rubber bands and just wrap it in rubber bands to keep them tight and hold the glue together while it's drying, and they dry pretty quickly. All right, with my newfound rhythm, I've got some, I'll call it a 1x2 box, so a two deep box, and then I made some new boxes yesterday that are 2x2, so they're a little bit bigger, and they all should fit in the same sort of space here. I'm going to try something next. I need to crank a ton of these things out, and I'm getting kind of more efficient at putting them together. I'm just going to time myself, get in a rhythm, crank them all out, and see how long it takes me to make a set of them, just because that'll give me some idea of what the scope of this really looks like for doing a lot of these. I don't know how many of these I'm going to use. I'm not obviously going to bin every single piece of hardware I've got, but I'm going to focus on the stuff that is there's one drawer that I almost always go to, and I'm always sorting through that one. So I'll start with that drawer and kind of work my way out by how frequently I work in things. So I'll put on a timer, put on some music, and I'll crank out another set of these, and I'll check back with you in a minute and see what we get. All right, so that's hour and 10 minutes, and I was able to build 16 boxes. That's one rip on a 4x8 sheet of plywood the 4-foot way, and then diced up into 8 little panels. Each panel produces 2 boxes, the way I've got it lined up. And I've got these boxes, they're all rubber banded up and drying, so I'll freeze the clock, And I'll come back in a minute after these have dried and sand them and get them all prepped and tell you the rest of the time it takes. All right, so these are all dried out and I took the rubber bands off, and I'll just sand them and see how much time remains. I just sand these around to clean up any glue that's kind of spread out, and then just to take the corners off because they're actually kind of sharp. So I just run around briefly with a sanding block and clean them up. An hour and 24 minutes. So that's 84 minutes and 16 different boxes. So I don't have the math right in front of me, but that's pretty good. I feel like I'm not going to make, drawer after drawer after drawer of these, but I can easily every once in a while knock out a handful of these, and as I need them for stuff I'm working on, add them to the list that I've got. And I've got the different sizes now, so I can switch things out and put in ones that are appropriately sized for whatever I'm trying to store and organize. And they're pretty inexpensive to make, so if I need more of them, it's not hard to add more. So I'm excited about these. This will be kind of fun to get stuff organized. All right, so next up, I have been doing all these with a laser, and the laser is great. It's super easy, it's accurate, but not everybody has a laser. So I'm going to show you how you can build these boxes just with a table saw. I'm going to start by just taking a piece of 3/4 inch scrap, and I'm going to build a little interior mold for the box so that it's easy to kind of set up my dimensions and build. It'll be just an easy way to clamp it, so you'll see what I mean. But I'm going to make some cuts here. All right, with those cut out, I can go ahead and glue this up. And I just, like I said, I made a little block that's kind of like just a form that'll make it a little bit easier to glue together. So with these dried, even though they don't have finger joints, they're going to be plenty sturdy. And I'll just do the same things that I did to the laser cut ones, which is to just run over them with a little bit of sandpaper and knock off the little glue bits that are on the edges, knock down the corners. You can see that you can make these with or without the laser, and they work just fine. And then this one is a 3U drawer, so that can sit in there, and I can keep sorting stuff. So with a bunch of hardware and a bunch of bins, I set about starting to sort them out. And this drawer that it's in front of me, the blue drawer, is actually the worst drawer that I have, in the sense that that's the one I'm always digging around and looking for the right bolt, the right nut, the right screw. And so this is kind of the peak of the pain point, if you will. So I started by using a little gauging tool and measuring each of the different pieces of hardware and sorting them into bins. And I just put some blue painter's tape on it with some magic marker to mark the bins, because I figured over time I need to figure out how much I'm going to accumulate and of what size in each of these things. And as soon as that sort of stabilizes, I can work on putting in a formal label on it. But for now, I'm just sorting through and getting my most commonly used drawer sorted out first to kind of see where this is all headed. While I was sorting these, I was trying to come up with a way to position each of the little drawer bins in the laser so that I can accurately put down a label on it once I do finalize the labels. And I came up with an idea for a little jig that I'll show you. Okay, so the way I see this working is this thing, let's bust it out of its little mold here. I can set up in the laser, and I've got a little crosshair and I've got some spacers. And so if I put the spacers on the sides, it will give me the right sizes. So I can load these up in laser, center my laser on that spot there, and then pull this out, and it fits one of the sort of 1U boxes. So I can load it in there. Then I know I'm centered on, basically the top up here. I'm centered on this spot, and I can adjust the laser height, and then I can just engrave the top of these, and I can roll through them and engrave a bunch of them all at once. And the spacers are different sizes, so like if it's a 3U drawer, you can space it out and fit that in there, so it'll fit all of them. All right, so hopefully I got everything lined up right. We'll give it a try. Looks pretty good. So the label looks good on there. I'm going to need to fix the that was a little cumbersome to get it in there, but that's going to work pretty well. All right, well, I've got the pattern down now, so I have a way to build these boxes. I'll use the laser for them, but like I showed you, you can build them without a laser. These are some 3x2s that I built that work well and didn't use a laser. I tried dropping into a local makerspace open house, and they had several lasers. One of the one that would have worked was broken, and then the small one that I tried really did just more engraving than cutting, but you could likely find a public laser if you don't have one yourself. I'm sorting through. I've got a magnet that I'm checking for stainless versus regular steel on my bolts, and that's nice to sort those out. I'm getting everything binned out, and I've gone through the worst drawer. This drawer is the one that is the most challenging for me and the one I'm almost always fishing in, and I've already got it sorted out. I went ahead and took a couple and dropped down labels. That worked well. The labels, it turns out that jig wasn't all that necessary. It's easier to just kind of eyeball with the little laser pointer, the little red dot right where the center is, and then just engrave that. And I can crank those out as I kind of establish which ones are going to be permanent. And I'll get these organized. I expect to have several drawers with bolts and nuts and screws and things in there separated out. And this little testing rig is really nice for sorting out the different bolts. Anyway, it's going to be fun to put all this together and sort it out. I look forward to showing you more of the bench work. We're going to do a road trip soon, and I'll have a video of that shows me running down to pick up some colored MDF, and I'm going to talk to the MDF manufacturer a little bit about MDF and learn more about it and what they've got to offer down there. Anyway, until I see you next, I'll be out building, and if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe. Thanks.